Hi everyone, my name's Jonathan. Thanks for watching this YouTube clip. I'm here to unpack a really interesting book that I've read. In fact, it's a book that thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people have read over the past 2 millenniums. This is St Augustine's book, The Confessions, and it has the seminal piece of writing about time. So if you're interested in time, I really recommend getting this book. But one thing that you'll notice when you're reading his condensed specific chapter within here which focuses on this is that it's tightly written. So it really concentrates how he explains things, and it requires a bit of imagination to draw it out. So I just wanted to unpack my view of what his thoughts are for conversational purposes and to help create a discussion. So the first thing that St Augustine talks about in his seminal book on time is that most people think about time as being 3 constructs: the past, the present, and the future. And he controversially jumps in right away and debunks all of that and says that there is no past and there is no future. You can't get in your car and drive somewhere in the world and find a big sign somewhere saying welcome to the past. The past used to exist, but it doesn't exist now. It lives on in your memory, and it lives on in certain artifacts like history books and video and things like that, but for all intents and purposes it doesn't exist. It isn't real. You can't touch it, you can't interact with it. And the same thing with the future. You can plan for it. If you're going to be meeting the executioner tomorrow, it's very real and you'll be fixated on it. You can almost taste it, but it's not real. It doesn't exist. So that's his first point, which he stresses. Instead, he postulates that there's 3 forms of the present. The first form of the present is in the moment, and when you're present and you're just kind of reacting and you're not thinking about anything other than what's presently encountering you. This other form of the present is remembering. So the present where you're remembering the past, and the third form of the present is when you're planning the future. So all 3 of those parts of the present. And for me, and one of the reasons why I've been interested in reading about time is I'd like to learn how to utilize my own time better, and I'd like personally to use the middle part of that, which is being present in the moment more. So that was the first thing he had to say. The next thing he had to say, which is slightly more interesting or slightly more tougher, and why I wanted to make this video to unpack it, is that time is intrinsically linked to events. You basically need an event for time to pass, and that time is defined by events, and time happens because events happen. So I want to unpack this with examples. When you sit in a movie, you're there and you're present during the entire movie, and you define that experience and that time you spent in the movie as one experience, as one time unit that you spent in the movie. And one interesting thing to note, which we'll come back to later, is that 3 hours and 20 minutes may have passed for your favourite movie like Lord of the Rings, but it'll feel like 1 hour already passed, which is the perceived time, especially so if you're in the moment during that time that you're in the movie. So time is defined by the event. Now I want to draw this out with an example. Time is like liquid, and we've got this glass of water here. And high school science tells us that how to observe this glass of water here, which is half full. And it says that water takes on the shape of its container. And likewise, time takes on the shape of its container, which is the event. So if an event is long, then the present moment of that time will stretch to the length of the event, but it's also shaped by the intensity of the event, not only by the linear time of it, but by the intensity of it. It's multiple constructs of the event which contain the time which dwells within it. The next point that Augustine makes after linking time to events and saying that time needs an event and that time is defined by events is to somewhat counter that point by talking about the present moment as being fleeting microseconds. So the present, it's here but now it's gone. It's here but now it's gone. Everyone can understand that and see it. It's so hard to think about how small the present moment is. It's very real to us because that's how we interact with other people in that present. We have to grab it and plan for it. We think about our words and then we have to spit them out at the very moment that the present moment passes us by. So the present moment is microseconds, which are infinitely small. And how does that tie in with the earlier concept that we said that the present extends to the length of a movie or the length of an event? And what we have to accept is that the microseconds almost have a tag on them, if you will, and that tag is what is the name of the event, or what is the event. And if all of those microseconds have the same tag, then they form up and gel together to be one overall body of time known as a present moment, despite the fact that they're individual microseconds. So to take our glass of water again, this glass of water is actually made up of hundreds and possibly thousands of droplets, and altogether they form one body of water. So likewise with time being comprised, one's present moment of a movie being comprised of hundreds of thousands or millions of microseconds, but they all form together to be one stream and one body of water, or one body of time if you would prefer. Now, to take you back a ways, back in the 70s and 80s when I used to go to the Regent Cinema and so forth in downtown Hamilton, New Zealand, the halfway through it there'll be a cliffhanger moment in the movie, and all of a sudden there'll be intermission would come up in the movie. Now that's unheard of in the year 2018. We don't have intervals in movies. But it wouldn't really interrupt the movie. You would go down and you'd get your lollies and candy and chocolate bars and ice creams, and you'd come back and the movie would continue. And when you left the movie afterwards, it wouldn't be a jarring experience that the movie had been interrupted. And the reason for that is that the microseconds all had the same tag. Okay? They all had the same event tag. So despite the fact there's a gap in the middle, the microseconds on this side of the gap had an event tag, and the microseconds on that side of the event had an event tag that was the same event. So they all formed together to be one present, despite the fact that there's a gap in the middle. And I just want to illustrate with this glass of water again. See how it's half full? Okay, now this glass of water was filled up before we started filming this. And I'm now going to pour some more water in here, some 25 minutes after we've begun later. And you can see it doesn't matter to the glass of water. It's become a bigger body of water, but it's still one body of water. And likewise, it's one body of time, even if it's interrupted. And I think that that's an area that could be explored more. So that's his last point. Now I want to leave the viewer with some vocabulary. There's three forms of time. There is linear time, which is what you see on your watch, what you see on an atomic clock, what ticks away on your grandfather's clock, and it just marches on. There is perceived time, and remember our example of a movie, 3 hours 20 minutes for Lord of the Rings. It might seem like an hour when you pass by, when you leave the movie because you're so engrossed in it. Perceived time. Lastly, there's specious time. Now, specious time is the concept that time exists in events, and it's defined by events, and it exists and lasts for the amount of time that an event lasts for. And we've got a slide here just to spell that out for you. The specious time effectively is two concepts. Number one is the concept that you are in the present for the duration of an event or an experience. It's just the name for the concept, specious time. And then it's also, specious time is that time when you're sitting in the movie and in the moment. If you're in the moment for an extended period of time and you're present for that period of time, it's specious time. Now, I didn't come up with this word. This word actually, although it's based on Augustine's thoughts in 397 AD or whenever he wrote the book, actually comes out of 19th century philosophers. So Robert Kelly, 1882, wrote about specious time or the specious presence, and William James, 1893, wrote about it. So not my thoughts, and that's where I got the phrase from, specious time. They had a different take on it slightly than Augustine, and they said that the specious present relies on an experience. So it exists and for the length of an experience, whereas Augustine focuses on events. And there's a subtle definition difference here that makes Augustine's version of specious time more powerful, because to be an experience you need a human being, but for an event you cannot have a human being be there. You could have an event be some kind of astronomical event. For example, the Big Bang Theory. They say that time didn't exist before the Big Bang took place. Well, if we use Augustine's version of specious time, it's quite easier to see that by definition, because no events were taking place before the Big Bang, that specious time didn't exist before the Big Bang, or time didn't exist. And perhaps if we really want to understand, because it's hard to get your head around how linear time didn't exist before the Big Bang, perhaps we can postulate that linear time and specious time both need to exist for one or the other to exist. To close, I want to put it out there that there's some time relationships. So this is our last slide there to look at here. There's a relationship between linear time, the intensity of the event, and perceived time. There's a relationship between the intensity of the event and the purity of the specious time. And the intensity of time can alter the perceived time and the specious time. So those are just some musings that I've had. And to unpack the first one, you can see that the more intense the time is, the shorter the perceived time will be. The more intense the event is, the more in the moment you'll be, or the more pure the specious time will be. And with the intensity of the event, it's the driver for altering perceived time or specious time. So that's the conclusion of the video. I hope you enjoyed, or at least there was food for thought there as we unpack St Augustine's thoughts, as powerful as they are, even though they were written so many hundreds of years ago. Thanks for watching.